She was crawling through the desert with 40 pounds of iron chained to her ankles. The metal had cut through skin, through muscle, down to the bone. 37 days of torture. 37 days of watching her own flesh rot. And when the man who did this to her came to check if she was finally dying, she broke his neck with her bare hands. This is the story of the giant woman who refused to die, and the broken man who found her. The sky over New Mexico territory stretched white as bleached bone. Heat shimmered off the red earth, making the horizon dance and waver like a fever dream. The air tasted of dust and sage and something else, something that smelled like the end of things. Nathan Cole rode alone through this burning emptiness. 3 weeks since Colorado. 3 weeks since the mountains. 3 weeks since he had spoken more than 10 words to another living soul. His horse, a gray gelding he called Smoke, picked its way through the scattered rocks and scrub brush with the patience of an animal that had learned to trust its rider's silences. Nathan was 37 years old, though the desert sun and mountain winters had carved lines into his face that made him look older. His hair hung past his shoulders, black as a crow's wing, straight as his Shoshone mother's had been. His eyes were the color of winter creek water, pale gray, watchful, the kind of eyes that saw everything and gave nothing away. A beard covered the lower half of his face, not out of vanity, but out of the simple indifference of a man who had stopped caring what mirrors showed him. He wore the clothes of a mountain man, buckskin jacket worn soft by years of use, canvas trousers tucked into boots that had walked 1,000 miles of wilderness trails. A Bowie knife hung at his hip, the blade honed to a razor's edge. Across his saddle rested a Hawken rifle, the big .50 caliber that could drop an elk at 200 yards. On his other hip, a Colt revolver loaded, always loaded. These were the tools of survival. Nathan knew them the way a preacher knows scripture. They had kept him alive through 15 years in the high country, through blizzards that buried cabins to their rooftops, through encounters with grizzlies and mountain lions, and men who were worse than either. They had kept him alive through everything except the one thing that mattered. They had not saved Elizabeth. He pushed that thought away the way he had pushed it away 1,000 times since leaving Colorado. Some wounds you learn to live with. Some wounds become part of you like a scar that aches when the weather changes. Elizabeth was both. She was the wound that would never heal, and the scar that reminded him every morning why he kept breathing. Because someone had to remember her. Because someone had to carry the weight of what happened in that cabin 40 miles from anywhere, with snow falling and a grizzly breaking through the door and 7 rifle shots that were not enough. 7 shots. She had fired all 7, killed the bear, but the bear had killed her first. Nathan shook his head, forcing his mind back to the present. The desert, the heat, the endless red emptiness stretching toward mountains that looked like they might be a dream, might be a lie, might be nothing at all. He had been riding south for 3 weeks, away from the Rockies, away from the trap lines he knew like the back of his hand, away from the cabin he had built with his own hands and burned with his own hands, with Elizabeth still inside because the ground was frozen too hard to dig a grave, and burning was the only way he could think to honor her. The smoke had risen straight up into the winter sky, black and thick and final, a column of grief reaching toward heaven. That was 2 years ago. 2 years of wandering. 2 years of taking work where he could find it, guide jobs and hunting contracts and the occasional bounty when the money ran low enough. 2 years of trying to outrun the ghosts that followed him like shadows. But you cannot outrun what lives inside you. Nathan had learned that lesson the hard way. The very hard way. He had killed 4 men in his life. 3 of them in Colorado claimed jumpers who thought a half-breed mountain man would be easy pickings. They had been wrong. They had died quickly, cleanly, which was more mercy than they deserved. The 4th man, the one nobody knew about, had been different. The trader who held Nathan's debt. The man whose $200 had sent Nathan into the mountains for those extra weeks chasing beaver pelts, while Elizabeth sat alone in a cabin 40 miles from help. Nathan had ridden into town 3 days after burying his wife, walked into the trader's store, shot him once in the head, did not say a word, did not explain, did not apologize. The trader died confused, not understanding why. Nathan understood. That was enough. Now he rode through New Mexico territory looking for land that nobody wanted, a place where a man with blood on his hands and grief in his heart could disappear. He had heard about a town called Blackstone, Heard about a ranch that had been empty for 2 years. Heard about a price so low it had to mean trouble. He did not care about trouble. When you have already lost everything, what is left to fear? The sun was beginning its descent toward the western horizon when Nathan heard it, a sound that did not belong to the desert, faint, almost lost in the whisper of wind through the scrub brush. But Nathan's ears had been trained by 15 years of listening for sounds that meant danger, sounds that meant prey, sounds that meant the difference between life and death in country where either could come at you without warning. This sound was none of those things. This sound was human. A moan, weak, desperate, like wind through a crack in stone, except wind did not carry that particular note of suffering. Nathan reined smoke to a halt, listened. The sound came again from somewhere to his left, beyond a low rise dotted with creosote bushes and prickly pear cactus. His hand moved to his Colt. Habit, reflex. The gesture of a man who had learned that compassion and caution were not mutually exclusive. He guided Smoke toward the sound, moving slowly, scanning the terrain with eyes that missed nothing. The landscape offered little cover for an ambush, but Nathan had seen men die from underestimating their surroundings, had nearly died himself more than once. He crested the rise, looked down, and felt his heart stop in his chest. There was something crawling through the dust below. Something large. Too large to be what his mind was telling him it had to be. Nathan dismounted in one fluid motion, rifle in hand, and moved closer. Each step brought more details into focus. Each step made the impossible more real. It was a woman, but not like any woman Nathan had ever seen. She was enormous. Even crawling on hands and knees, she was massive, her body stretched and elongated in ways that defied understanding. Her arms were long, corded with muscle beneath skin that had been burned red by the sun. Her back was broad as a man's, broader the bones of her spine visible through a dress that had been reduced to rags. And her legs. Nathan felt his stomach clench when he saw her legs. Iron bands encircled her ankles. Not shackles, not the kind used on prisoners. These were thick, brutal things designed not just to restrain, but to punish. They had bitten deep into her flesh, the metal edges cutting through skin and muscle until the wounds had festered and swelled around them. Dried blood formed a black crust where the iron met flesh. The smell of infection rose from her in waves, sweet and rotten and unmistakable. She had been crawling through this desert, through this heat, with 40 pounds of iron eating into her legs. Nathan did not know how far she had come. He did not know how she was still alive. He took another step closer, and she heard him. Her head snapped up, and for the first time he saw her face. She was not old, 30, maybe 35. Her features were strong rather than delicate, a face built for endurance rather than beauty, though there was beauty in it too. Beauty in the high cheekbones, in the full lips, in the dark eyes that held more pain than Nathan had ever seen in another human being. Those eyes fixed on him with an expression that was part terror, part desperate hope, part the wild calculation of a wounded animal deciding whether to fight or flee. "Please." The word came out as barely more than a whisper, scraped raw by thirst and exhaustion. "Please, I need help." Nathan knelt in the dust, moving slowly, keeping his hands visible. The way you would approach a frightened horse. The way you would approach anything that had learned to expect cruelty from the world. "Easy," he said. His voice felt rusty from disuse, strange in his own ears. "I am not going to hurt you." She stared at him with those dark eyes, searching his face for lies. Whatever she found there made some of the tension drain from her shoulders. "My legs." Her voice cracked on the words. "The iron. I cannot. I need someone to—" She stopped, swallowed, tried again. "Touch it there. I need medicine." "Salve. I cannot reach. My arms are not—" She trailed off, and Nathan understood. The iron bands had been positioned precisely where she could not reach them herself, could not clean the wounds, could not apply medicine, could not do anything but feel them fester and rot day after day. This was not just imprisonment. This was torture. Deliberate, calculated torture designed to break a person slowly to make them watch their own body decay. "I have medicine," Nathan said, "in my saddlebags. Let me help you." She nodded, a tiny movement that seemed to cost her everything she had left. Nathan worked quickly. He retrieved his kit from Smoke's saddlebags, a leather pouch containing the herbs and salves that every mountain man learned to prepare. yarrow for wounds, sage for infection, bear grease mixed with pine resin to draw out poison. He knelt beside her again, this time at her feet. Up close, the wounds were even worse than they had appeared from a distance. The iron had cut through skin and fat and muscle in some places, down to the bone. Yellow pus oozed from the edges of the metal. The flesh around the bands had swelled to twice its normal size, red and hot to the touch. It was a miracle she was still alive. It was a miracle she had not lost the legs entirely. "This is going to hurt," he said. "I know." Her voice was steadier now, as if his presence had given her something to hold on to. "I have been through worse." Nathan did not doubt it. He began cleaning the wounds using water from his canteen to wash away the crusted blood and pus. She made a sound deep in her throat, a sound of pure agony, but she did not scream, did not beg him to stop. Just lay there with her hands clenched into fists, her face pressed into the red earth, her body shaking with the effort of endurance. Nathan had seen men break under less pain than this, had seen hardened fighters weep and beg and soil themselves when wounds were cleaned. This woman, this giant of a woman with iron eating into her flesh, took the pain and held it and refused to let it master her. He found himself respecting her, a deep, wordless respect for the kind of strength that had nothing to do with the size of her body. "What is your name?" he asked, more to give her something to focus on than out of curiosity. "Grace." The word was muffled by the ground. "Grace Brennan. I am Nathan, Nathan Cole." "Nathan." She said his name like she was testing it, seeing how it felt in her mouth. "Nathan, why are you helping me?" It was the same question she had asked before, the question that seemed to matter more to her than the pain, more than the iron, more than anything else. Nathan did not answer immediately. He finished cleaning the first wound, began applying the salve, his fingers gentle despite their roughness. The medicine would help. Not enough, not nearly enough, but it was something. A start. "Because I failed someone once," he finally said. "Someone who deserved better than my absence." She turned her head, looked at him with those dark eyes that held a world of suffering. "Who?" The question hung in the air between them. Nathan felt the familiar tightness in his chest, the grief that never quite went away. "Her name was Elizabeth, my wife. She died because I was not there to protect her." "What happened to her?" "Bear attack. I was gone, trapping. 3 weeks became 4. When I came back," he did not finish, did not need to. Grace understood. He could see it in her face, the recognition of one survivor to another. "How long?" he asked, changing the subject. "The iron. How long have you been wearing it?" 37 days. 37 days. More than 5 weeks of this. 5 weeks of iron cutting into flesh, of wounds festering in the heat, of crawling through a landscape that offered no mercy and no shade. "Who did this to you?" Her jaw tightened. Something dark passed through her eyes, a shadow of memory that held rage and grief and something else. Something that looked like murder held barely in check. "The Dalton brothers," she said. "Henry, Luther, Frank. They killed my husband, took our ranch, wanted me gone but not quick. They wanted me to suffer first, wanted me to die slow." She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice was different, harder, colder. "Frank came to me every day, brought food he would not let me eat, told me how Thomas begged before they shot him, how he cried, how he called my name. Thomas, your husband." "Yes." Nathan moved to her other ankle, began the slow process of cleaning those wounds too. The iron on this side had cut even deeper. He could see white bone gleaming through the ravaged flesh. "How did you get free?" he asked. "Frank made a mistake, day 37. He thought I was too weak to matter. Unlocked one of the bands to check the wound. Said he wanted to see how close I was to losing the leg." She smiled then, a terrible smile, a smile that had no joy in it at all. "He was wrong about me being too weak." "What did you do?" "I broke his neck, snapped it like kindling. Took his keys, freed myself, started walking." Nathan absorbed this information in silence. This woman, this Grace Brennan, had killed a man with her bare hands while wearing 40 pounds of iron, had broken a man's neck while her legs rotted beneath her. He should have been afraid. Perhaps he was. But fear was a small thing compared to the respect that was growing in his chest, respect in something else. something that felt almost like recognition. "The other brothers," he said, "Henry and Luther, they will be looking for you." "Oh, yes. They will want revenge." "Yes. And you came this direction because our ranch is this direction, mine and Thomas's, 20 acres, spring water, the land they killed him for. I thought if I could reach it, if I could get home." She stopped, swallowed hard. "I did not think beyond that. Just wanted to die somewhere that mattered, somewhere Thomas and I were happy." Nathan finished applying the salve to her second ankle. The medicine would help fight the infection, but she needed more than herbs and bear grease. She needed rest, food, clean water, time for her body to heal. She needed someone to protect her while she was vulnerable. He thought about the land he had come to buy. 20 acres with a spring, a ranch that had been empty for 2 years. The price had been almost nothing, $60 for property that should have been worth 10 times that much. Now he understood why. "The Brennan place," he said slowly. "That is where I was heading. I bought it 3 days ago. $60. Grace's eyes went wide. Shock and confusion and something else flickered across her face. "You bought our land." "I did not know its history, just knew it was cheap and remote. A place to disappear." She stared at him for a long moment. Then incredibly, she laughed. A broken sound, rough and painful, but still a laugh. "The man who bought my dead husband's ranch finds me dying in the desert, and he carries medicine, and he asks nothing in return." "Not nothing," Nathan said quietly. "I ask that you let me help you reach it. Let me get you home. And then, what? And then we figure out the rest. Together." Grace was silent for a long time. Nathan could see her thinking, weighing options, calculating risks. She had survived 37 days of torture and 3 days of crawling through the desert. She had learned to trust no one, expect nothing, hope for even less. But she was also at the end of her strength, at the end of her options. And sometimes when you have nothing left to lose, trust becomes the only choice available. "All right," she said finally. "Help me up." Nathan moved to her side, preparing to lift her. Then he paused, looked at her, really looked. She was enormous. Even lying down, he could see that standing she would be massive. Taller than any man he had ever met. Taller than seemed possible for a human being. "How tall are you?" he asked. 8 feet and 6 inches. Give or take. Nathan blinked. 8.5 feet. Nearly a foot taller than the tallest man he had ever encountered. How born normal, started growing at 12, did not stop until 20. She met his eyes without flinching. "They called me the giant goddess of the plains. I performed in a traveling show for 4 years, standing on a platform while people paid to stare." "That sounds humiliating, degrading." It was. Her voice was matter of fact. "But it kept me alive. Until Thomas found me. Your husband. He saw me perform, came back 4 nights in a row. On the 4th night, he waited by the tent after and asked if I wanted to leave. Just like that. No proposition, no bargain. Just, did I want to leave?" "What did you say?" "I asked why. Why would a stranger offer to help a freak like me?" She paused. "He said because you look like you are dying inside. And nobody should have to die like that." Nathan felt something shift in his chest. A recognition, an understanding. Because he knew what it meant to be dying inside. Knew what it meant to have someone see that death and offer a hand anyway. "Help me up," Grace said again. "We should move. Henry will have men looking for me. It is not safe to stay in the open." Nathan nodded, braced himself, reached down. Lifting her was like lifting a fallen oak. She had to weigh close to 300 pounds, all of it muscle and bone. Even with her helping as much as she could, it took everything Nathan had to get her upright and moving towards Smoke. The horse shied when he saw her, wickered nervously, eyes rolling white. Grace was bigger than anything Smoke had ever been asked to carry. "Easy," Nathan murmured, stroking the horse's neck. "Easy, boy, she is a friend." Smoke calmed slowly, still nervous, but willing to trust his rider. Nathan helped Grace onto the horse, watching her face as the movement jarred her wounded ankles. She made no sound, just set her jaw and bore it. Nathan took the reins and began walking, leading Smoke toward the northeast. Toward the Brennan Ranch, toward whatever future waited for them both. They traveled in silence for a while. The sun continued its descent, painting the desert in shades of gold and red and purple. The heat began to ease, replaced by the first hints of evening cool. Nathan, Grace said finally. He looked back at her. Why are you really doing this, the truth? He considered the question. Considered lying. Considered telling her what she wanted to hear. Instead, he told her the truth. Because I am tired of being alone. Because I have spent 2 years running from what I lost, and I am starting to think that running is not the answer. Because when I look at you, I see someone else who has been through hell and come out the other side. Someone who might understand. Understand what? What it means to survive when the people you love do not. What it means to carry that weight every single day. What it means to keep breathing when part of you died with them. Grace was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was soft. I understand, more than you know. They reached the Brennan Ranch as the last light of day faded from the sky. Nathan had not known what to expect, but the reality still hit him like a fist to the gut. The place was ruins. Fences broken or leaning at drunken angles. A barn that tilted to one side like a drunk trying to stay upright. A house of adobe and weathered wood that looked like it was breathing, the walls expanding and contracting as the evening wind pushed through gaps in the boards. Burn marks scarred the ground around the main house. Fence posts stood like grave markers, blackened and twisted. The corral that had once held horses or cattle was empty, the gate hanging from one hinge. 2 years of abandonment had turned what must have been a working ranch into a ghost story. But there were signs of life too. Recent signs. A massive coat hung on a peg near the door. Boots that must have been 2 feet long sat beside the hearth. A cup on the table looked like it had been used within the past few days. Grace's things, left behind when the Daltons took her, waiting for her return. Home, she whispered. The word held more grief than Nathan had ever heard in a single syllable. He helped her down from smoke, helped her into the house, helped her onto a bed that had clearly been built for someone her size. The frame was massive, the mattress wide enough for 3 normal people. Thomas Brennan had built this for his wife. Had built everything in this house with her proportions in mind. Grace lay back on the bed and, for the first time since Nathan had found her, she let go. Let the exhaustion wash over her. Let her eyes close. Stay, she murmured. Please, I cannot be alone. Not tonight. Nathan pulled a chair close to the bed, a normal-sized chair that made him feel like a child next to her massive form. I will be here, he said. Sleep, I will keep watch. She was unconscious before he finished speaking. Nathan sat in the darkness listening to her breathe. Outside, the desert wind whispered through the broken fences and the tilting barn. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote called. Another answered. He thought about the Dalton brothers, about what Grace had told him, about what they had done to her husband, what they had done to her. He thought about Henry Dalton, the eldest brother, the one who had planned it all. About Luther, the violent one, the one who enjoyed causing pain. About Frank, the one Grace had killed with her bare hands. They would come looking for her. Nathan was certain of that. They had invested too much in her suffering to let her escape without consequences. And when they came, they would find him too, standing between them and the woman they had tried to destroy. Let them come, Nathan thought. Let them come and find out what happens when you corner a man who has nothing left to lose. He checked his rifle, checked his pistol, checked the knife at his hip. Then he settled back in his chair and watched the darkness, waiting for whatever morning would bring. He must have dozed because the sound of movement snapped him awake. His hand was on his rifle before his eyes were fully open. But it was only Grace. She had shifted in her sleep, turning onto her side, and the movement had pulled at her wounded ankles. Even unconscious, a grimace of pain crossed her face. Nathan relaxed, let his hand fall away from the weapon, watched her sleep. In the dim light filtering through the gaps in the walls, she looked different, softer somehow. The lines of pain and endurance that marked her face were smoothed by sleep, revealing the woman beneath the survivor. She was not beautiful in any conventional sense. Her features were too strong for that, her body too massive, too far outside the boundaries of what the world called feminine. But there was something there, something that drew the eye and held it. Strength, Nathan thought. That was what he was seeing, strength not just of body but of spirit. The kind of strength that could endure 37 days of torture and still find the will to fight, still find the will to live. He had known men who broke under far less, had seen hardened soldiers crumble when faced with a fraction of what Grace had survived. And here she was sleeping peacefully for perhaps the first time in weeks, trusting a stranger to keep her safe. That trust meant something. Nathan did not fully understand what yet, but he knew it meant something. Dawn came slowly painting the eastern sky in shades of pink and gold. Nathan rose from his chair, stretching muscles that had stiffened during the night. He needed to check the perimeter, needed to see what they were working with in terms of defense. He stepped outside into the cool morning air. The desert was quiet, that strange stillness that comes in the moments between night and day. Smoke was where Nathan had left him, hobbled near a water trough that held a few inches of brackish liquid. Nathan began a systematic survey of the property. The fences were mostly useless, but the barn still stood, and its walls were thick enough to provide cover if needed. The house itself was more solid than it appeared from outside the adobe walls capable of stopping bullets. He found a root cellar behind the house, partially collapsed but still accessible. A good place to store supplies, or to hide if it came to that. Near the barn he found something else. Tracks, recent tracks. 2 horses, maybe 3, had been here within the past few days. They had circled the property, stopped near the house, then headed north again. The Daltons, or their men, scouting. They knew Grace had been here, knew she was trying to come home. Nathan filed that information away, added it to the calculations already running through his mind. When he returned to the house, Grace was awake. She had managed to sit up, her back against the wall, her injured legs stretched out before her. "You found the tracks," she said. It was not a question. "Yes. They have been watching this place since I escaped, waiting to see if I would come back." "Why did you not mention that before?" "Would it have changed anything?" Nathan considered. "No. Then it does not matter." Grace shifted, wincing as the movement pulled at her wounds. "What matters is what happens now." Nathan moved to her side, knelt, began unwrapping the bandages he had applied the day before. The wounds looked better than they had, the swelling slightly reduced, the color less angry. The medicine was working. "I need to clean these again," he said, "and apply fresh salve." "I know." He worked in silence for a few minutes, hands gentle on her damaged flesh. Grace watched him with those dark eyes that seemed to see everything. "You are good at this," she said finally. "Healing. My mother taught me. She was Shoshone, knew herbs and medicines that white doctors have never heard of." "Where is she now?" "Dead, long time ago. My father too. They died when I was 15. Fever took them both in the same winter." "Is that when you went to the mountains?" Nathan nodded. "Had nowhere else to go. Nobody who wanted a half-breed boy with no family and no prospects. So I went up, learned to trap, learned to hunt, learned to survive. 20 years alone. Not entirely alone. I met Elizabeth when I was 32. We had 3 years together before—" He stopped, swallowed. "Before the bear." "Yes." Grace reached out, her massive hand coming to rest on his shoulder. The weight of it was enormous, but the touch was gentle, almost tentative. "We are the same," she said softly. "Both of us. Survivors who lost the people we loved. Wanderers trying to find a place that feels like home." Nathan looked at her, at this impossible woman with her impossible height and her impossible strength and her wounds that should have killed her a dozen times over. "Maybe," he said, "maybe we are." The moment stretched between them. Something unspoken passing from one to the other, an understanding that went deeper than words. Then Grace pulled her hand back and the moment broke. "There is something you should know," she said, "about the Daltons, about why they really want this land." "I am listening." "It is not just the water, not just the spring. There is something else." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "Before Thomas Henry Dalton came to see me, at the traveling show, he saw me perform and came back the next night with flowers, with gifts, with a proposal." Nathan felt his jaw tighten. "He wanted to marry you. He wanted to own me. There is a difference." Grace's voice was bitter. "He talked about me like I was a prize, a trophy, the largest woman in the world, and he could be the man who possessed her. He did not see me as human, just as something extraordinary that could be his." "What did you do?" "I refused him. publicly, in front of his brothers and a crowd of onlookers, told him I would rather die than belong to any man who saw me as a thing to be collected. And then Thomas came. 3 months later, and Thomas was everything Henry was not. Kind, gentle, saw me as a person, not a curiosity. When we married, when we came here to build our ranch, Henry, she stopped, her hands clenched into fists. He looked at me like I was already dead, like he was just waiting for the right moment to make it true. Nathan understood then. The land, the water, the ranch itself, those were excuses. Henry Dalton wanted Grace, had wanted her for years. And when she chose another man, when she rejected him for someone who saw her humanity instead of her height, that rejection had festered into something dark, something obsessive. This was not about property. This was about possession, about control, about the fury of a man who had been told no. He will not stop, Nathan said. It was not a question. No, he will not. Not until I am dead, or he is. Nathan finished bandaging her wounds, rose to his feet, looked down at this woman who had survived more than most people could imagine. Then we make sure it is him, he said, not you. Grace met his eyes, held his gaze for a long moment. You would fight for me. A woman you just met, a freak who has brought nothing but trouble to your doorstep. You are not a freak, Nathan's voice was firm. You are a woman who has been through hell and come out the other side. You are a survivor. And yes, I will fight for you, because fighting is what I do. Because protecting people is the only thing that makes the guilt bearable. What guilt? The guilt of not being there when Elizabeth needed me. The guilt of choosing beaver pelts over my wife's life. The guilt that eats at me every single day and every single night. Grace was silent for a moment. Then she reached out again, took his hand in hers. Her grip was careful, controlled, the strength of restraint. We both carry guilt, she said. We both carry loss. Maybe carrying it together will make it lighter. Before Nathan could respond, a sound reached his ears, distant but unmistakable. Hoofbeats, multiple horses coming from the north. He released Grace's hand, moved to the window, peered out through a gap in the boards, dust rising on the horizon. 5 riders, maybe 6, moving fast, coming straight toward the ranch. They are here, Nathan said. Grace's face went pale, but her voice was steady when she spoke. They will be looking for me. And when they find me, they will not just kill me. They will make an example. Henry wants everyone to know what happens to women who say no. Nathan grabbed his rifle, checked the loads, moved toward the door. Stay here. Do not move. Do not make a sound. Nathan, wait. He turned back. Grace was struggling to rise, her face twisted with pain and determination. There is something else you should know. About me. About what I am carrying. What? She placed a hand on her stomach. And Nathan understood. I am pregnant. I was already with child when they killed Thomas. I have hidden it for months through all the torture, all the pain. It is the only piece of him I have left. The words hit Nathan like a physical blow. Everything suddenly made sense. The Daltons' cruelty, Grace's desperate escape, her willingness to crawl through the desert with iron eating into her legs. She was not just fighting for herself, she was fighting for the life growing inside her. For the last piece of Thomas Brennan that still existed in this world. The hoofbeats were closer now, minutes away. Nathan looked at Grace, at her wounded legs and her swollen belly, and her eyes that held more courage than any 10 men he had ever known. Stay hidden, he said. No matter what you hear, no matter what happens, stay hidden and stay quiet. Nathan, I will not let them take you, either of you. He did not wait for her response. He stepped out into the morning light, rifle raised, and began walking toward the approaching riders. There were 6 of them, 5 hired guns, and 1 man Nathan recognized from descriptions he had gathered in town. Luther Dalton, the violent one, the one who enjoyed causing pain. Luther was big, not as big as Grace, but big enough. 6'4", maybe 250 pounds, all of it muscle and meanness. His nose was crooked from old breaks. His knuckles were scarred from a lifetime of fighting. He saw Nathan coming and raised a hand, bringing the group to a halt. Well, well, Luther called out. Who do we have here, the half-breed who bought my family's land? It is not your family's land, Nathan replied. His voice was calm, even, the voice of a man who had faced worse than this and had survived. It belongs to the Brennan estate, and I bought it legally. Legal. Luther spat the word like it tasted bad. You know what legal is out here. Breed legal is whatever my brother Henry says it is. Legal is whatever we decide to make it. And what have you decided? Luther smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. We have decided that you have something that belongs to us. A big something. About 8.5 feet tall. We tracked her here yesterday, saw her go in, have not seen her come out. There is no one here but me. Is that so? Luther nudged his horse forward a few steps. His men fanned out behind him, hands on their weapons. Then you would not mind if we took a look around, just to satisfy our curiosity. Nathan raised his rifle, not pointing it at anyone yet, just holding it ready. I would mind. This is my property. You are not welcome on it. Luther's smile widened. Brave words from one man facing 6. You really think you can stop us? I think I can kill at least 3 of you before you get me, and I think you are wondering which 3 it will be. The hired guns exchanged glances. Nathan saw doubt flicker in their eyes. They were being paid to enforce Luther's will, but they had not been paid to die. Luther saw it too. His smile faltered. We will be back, he said, with more men, and when we come back, we will burn this place to the ground with you in it. Then we will take what is ours. She is not yours, Nathan said. She never was. Luther's face twisted with rage. For a moment, Nathan thought he would charge, would force the confrontation here and now. But then Luther pulled on his reins, turning his horse away. Tell the freak we are coming for her. Tell her Henry sends his regards. He spurred his horse and rode away, his men following. Nathan watched them until they disappeared over the horizon. Then he lowered his rifle and walked back to the house. Grace was standing by the window, leaning against the wall for support. Her face was pale, but her eyes were dry. You heard, Nathan said. I heard. They will be back. More of them next time. I know. Nathan set down his rifle, looked at her, at this impossible woman who had become his responsibility in the space of 24 hours. We need to prepare, he said. Food, water, ammunition, defensive positions. If they want to fight, we will give them one they will not forget. Grace nodded slowly. Then she said something that surprised him. Thank you. For what? For staying, for fighting, for not looking at me like I am a monster. She paused. Nobody has done that in a very long time. Nathan crossed the room, stood before her, had to tilt his head back to meet her eyes. You are not a monster, Grace. You never were. Whatever they called you, whatever they made you believe about yourself, it was lies. All of it. How can you be so sure? Because I know what real monsters look like. I have seen them. I have killed them. And you are not one of them. Grace stared at him for a long moment. Then slowly she reached down and took his hand. Partners, she asked. Partners. They stood like that as the sun climbed higher, as the morning grew warm, as the future stretched out before them, full of uncertainty and danger, and the promise of something neither of them had expected to find. Hope. Fragile and tentative and new, but unmistakably there. And somewhere to the north, Luther Dalton was riding back to his brother with news of the mountain man who had stood between them and their prize, riding back to plan their revenge. The storm was coming, but Nathan Cole had weathered storms before, and this time he was not alone. The days that followed blurred together like watercolors bleeding into one another. Nathan fell into a rhythm he had not known since Elizabeth, the rhythm of caring for someone, of having purpose beyond mere survival. Each morning before dawn, he would rise from the chair where he slept and check on Grace. She was always awake, watching the door with eyes that had learned to expect violence at any moment. Each morning he would kneel beside her bed and unwrap the bandages from her ankles, clean the wounds with water, and Yarrow apply fresh salve, rewrap them with clean cloth torn from shirts he had found in the house, Thomas Brennan's shirts. The dead husband's clothes now serving to heal the widow's wounds. There was something fitting about that, Nathan thought. Something right. The infections were receding, slowly, painfully, but receding. The angry red was fading to pink. The swelling was going down. The flesh was beginning to knit itself back together around the damage the iron had caused. Grace bore the pain of each treatment without complaint. She would lie still, her massive hands gripping the bed frame until the wood creaked, Her jaw clenched tight, her breath coming in controlled bursts. But she never asked him to stop, never begged for mercy, never showed weakness. Nathan respected that more than he could say. On the third day, she sat up on her own for the first time. On the fifth day, she stood leaning heavily on a crutch Nathan had fashioned from a broken fence post. On the seventh day, she took her first steps since escaping from the Daltons. 3 steps. That was all she could manage before the pain drove her back to the bed. But those 3 steps felt like a victory, felt like proof that the human body could survive almost anything if the spirit inside it refused to surrender. "You are healing faster than you should," Nathan told her that evening. "Most people would still be bedridden." Grace smiled, a rare expression that transformed her face. "Most people are not built like me. My body has always healed quickly. One advantage of being a freak." "Do not call yourself that." "Why not? It is what I am, what I have always been." Nathan set down the cup of broth he had been preparing, crossed to where she sat propped against the wall, knelt so that their eyes were level. "You are not a freak," he said. "You are extraordinary. There is a difference." Grace stared at him. Something flickered in her dark eyes, something vulnerable and uncertain. "Thomas used to say that," she whispered. "Extraordinary. He was the only one who ever—" She stopped, swallowed hard. "I miss him," she said. "Every day, every hour. I miss him so much it feels like a hole in my chest that will never close." "I know." Nathan's voice was gentle. "I know exactly how that feels." They sat in silence for a while, two people bound by grief and loss and the strange circumstances that had brought them together. "Tell me about him," Nathan said finally. "About Thomas." Grace was quiet for a long moment. Then she began to speak. "He was not a big man, 5'9", maybe 160 pounds. When we stood together, I towered over him by nearly 3 feet. People stared. They always stared. Some laughed. Some made crude jokes about what we must look like together in bed." Her voice was steady, but Nathan could hear the old pain beneath it. "Thomas never cared. He would look up at me and smile and say that tall or short did not matter when two people loved each other. He would say that he had to reach higher to kiss me, but the view was worth the climb." A tear slid down her cheek. She did not wipe it away. "He built this house for me. Every doorway tall enough that I did not have to duck. Every chair strong enough to hold my weight. He learned carpentry just so he could make furniture that fit my body. Spent 3 years building this place piece by piece because he wanted me to have a home where I could be comfortable, where I could be normal. He sounds like a good man. He was the best man, the only man who ever saw me as a woman instead of a curiosity." Grace's voice hardened. "And they killed him for a piece of land in an underground spring. Shot him 6 times and left him to bleed out in a ditch because he refused to sell what was ours." Nathan felt his own anger rising, a cold fury that settled into his bones. "We will make them pay," he said. "I promise you that." "How?" "There are 2 of us, and God knows how many of them. Henry has money. He has hired guns. He has the sheriff in his pocket. What do we have? Each other." Grace looked at him, studied his face with those dark eyes that seemed to see everything. "You barely know me," she said. "We met a week ago. Why are you so willing to fight for someone you just met?" Nathan considered the question, considered the easy answers, the simple explanations. None of them felt true enough. "Because when I found you in that desert," he said finally, "I saw myself. I saw someone who had lost everything and was still fighting to survive. I saw someone who had been broken by the world but refused to stay broken." He paused, gathered his thoughts. "I spent 2 years running from my guilt, 2 years trying to escape what I had done and what I had failed to do. When I bought this land, I thought I was looking for a place to hide, a place to disappear. And now I think I was looking for a reason to stop running, a reason to stand and fight, a reason to be more than just a man waiting to die." Grace reached out, took his hand. Her fingers were massive compared to his, her palm rough with calluses, but her touch was gentle. "You are more than that," she said. "You are the man who saved my life, the man who carried me out of the desert, the man who dressed my wounds and asked nothing in return." "I did ask something." "What?" I asked you to let me help, to let me be part of whatever comes next. That is not nothing, Grace. That is everything. She squeezed his hand, and for a moment the weight of their combined grief seemed lighter. Not gone, never gone, but easier to bear. The moment was broken by the sound of hoofbeats. Nathan was on his feet instantly, rifle in hand. He moved to the window, peered through the gap in the boards. A single rider was approaching from the south. Not from the north where the Daltons would come from. From the south, from the direction of town. Stay here, Nathan said. He stepped out onto the porch, rifle raised but not aimed. Waiting. The rider came closer and Nathan saw that it was a man he recognized. Daniel Cooper, the store owner from Blackstone. The kind-faced man who had sold Nathan supplies on his first day in town. Cooper reined his horse to a stop a respectful distance away. He held his hands up, showing they were empty. Mr. Cole, he called out, I come in peace. I have news. Nathan lowered his rifle slightly. What kind of news? The kind best shared in private. Cooper glanced toward the house. Is she here, Mrs. Brennan? Nathan hesitated. Every instinct told him to deny it to protect Grace's location. But Cooper had been the one person in Blackstone who had treated him like a human being, had been the one person who seemed to care about something beyond fear and profit. She is here, Nathan said. How did you know? Everyone knows. Luther Dalton has been telling anyone who will listen about the half-breed who threatened him, about how you are harboring the giant freak who killed his brother. Cooper's voice was careful. I came to warn you, and to offer what help I can. Nathan considered. Then he nodded. Come inside. Cooper dismounted and followed Nathan into the house. When he saw Grace sitting against the wall, her bandaged legs stretched before her, something softened in his face. Mrs. Brennan, he said, I am so sorry for what you have endured. Grace looked at him with wary eyes. Why, you barely knew me. You barely knew Thomas. I knew enough. Cooper removed his hat, held it in his hands. I knew that Thomas was a good man who treated everyone fairly. I knew that you loved him and he loved you. I knew that what the Daltons did was murder, plain and simple, and that the law did nothing because the law in Blackstone answers to Dalton money. He paused, took a breath. I also knew that I was a coward, that I said nothing when they killed Thomas, that I looked the other way when they took your land and locked you in chains. I have been living with that shame for 2 years, Mrs. Brennan, and I am here to try to make it right. Grace studied him for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. What news do you bring, Mr. Cooper? Cooper glanced at Nathan, then back at Grace. I have been writing letters, for months now, to a federal marshal in Denver named William Cross. I have been documenting everything the Daltons have done, the bribery, the intimidation, the murder, and most importantly, the land fraud. Land fraud? Nathan asked. The underground spring on this property was surveyed by federal officials last year. It was designated a protected water source under the Homestead Act expansion, which means the Daltons' attempt to steal it through murder and manipulation is not just a local crime. It is a federal crime. Nathan felt something shift in his chest. Hope, maybe, or the beginning of a plan. This marshal, Cross, when is he coming? I received a letter back 3 days ago. He is building a case, gathering evidence, interviewing witnesses from across the territory. Cooper paused. He says he will be here in 2 to 3 months. Maybe sooner if we can provide more documentation. 2 to 3 months. Grace's voice was flat. We will be dead in 2 to 3 weeks. Henry will not wait that long. I know. Cooper reached into his coat, pulled out a folded piece of paper. That is why I brought this. A list of everyone in Blackstone who owes the Daltons money. Everyone who has been hurt by them. Everyone who might be willing to testify if they knew there was a chance at real justice. Nathan took the paper, unfolded it. The list was longer than he had expected. Nearly 30 names. These people will help us. Some of them. Maybe. If they believe we have a chance. Cooper's face was grim. Fear is a powerful thing, Mr. Cole. The Daltons have spent years making people afraid, making them believe that speaking up means death. But fear can be broken if you give people something to hope for. Nathan looked at Grace. She looked back at him. 2 months, she said. We need to survive 2 months. Can we do it? Grace was silent for a long moment. Then slowly she smiled. We can try. Cooper left an hour later, promising to send word if he heard anything more from the marshal, promising to be careful, promising to keep their secrets. Nathan watched him ride away, then turned to face Grace. We need to prepare, he said. Fortify this place. Stock supplies. Be ready for whatever they send at us. We need more than preparation. Grace pushed herself up on her crutch, wincing as her ankles took weight. We need allies. We need people who will stand with us when the Daltons come. Cooper's list is a start, but those are frightened people, Nathan. People who have been beaten down by years of Dalton rule. They will not fight unless they see someone else fighting first. Then we show them. How, Nathan considered. Remembered something Owen Briggs had told him in the saloon about how the Daltons controlled Blackstone through more than just violence, through information, through knowing everything that happened in their territory. There is a traitor, he said. Someone feeding them information. Someone who told them you were coming here. Someone who told them I was protecting you. Grace nodded slowly. That would explain how quickly Luther arrived, how he knew exactly where to find us. If we can find the traitor, we can cut off their intelligence, make them blind. And if we cannot find them, then we feed them false information, use them against their masters. Grace looked at him with something like admiration. You have done this before, fought a war of shadows. I spent 15 years in the mountains. Survival up there is about more than strength. It is about knowing your enemy, anticipating their moves, being where they do not expect you to be, and killing them when necessary. Nathan met her eyes. Yes, when necessary. The next week brought changes that neither of them had expected. Grace's wounds continued to heal. By the 10th day after Nathan found her, she could walk without the crutch. By the 12th day, she was helping with the work around the ranch, mending fences, feeding the few chickens that had survived 2 years of neglect, drawing water from the well. Her strength was remarkable. Nathan watched her lift fence posts that would have required 2 men to move, watched her carry buckets of water that would have strained his own muscles. Whatever strange alchemy had made her grow to 8.5 feet had also given her power proportional to her size. But what impressed him more than her physical strength was her resilience, her determination, the way she refused to let what had happened to her define what she would become. She had been tortured, broken, had lost her husband and nearly lost her life. And yet here she was rebuilding, reclaiming, refusing to surrender. Nathan found himself watching her more and more as the days passed, found himself admiring the way she moved, the way she spoke, the way her dark eyes lit up when something amused her, found himself feeling things he had thought died with Elizabeth. It scared him, and it drew him forward. On the 14th day, a visitor arrived. Nathan heard the horse approaching and reached for his rifle, but Grace stopped him with a touch. Wait, she said. I know that horse. A woman rode into view, slender, maybe late 30s, with auburn hair pinned beneath a practical hat. She rode side saddle proper, but there was a rifle across her lap that said she knew how to use it. Charlotte Webb, Grace breathed. I did not think anyone would come. Charlotte dismounted and approached the porch. She looked up at Grace with an expression that held no fear, no disgust, only compassion. Mrs. Brennan, she said, I heard what happened to you. I came as soon as I could. Grace descended the porch steps, moving carefully on legs that were still tender. Charlotte did not flinch as the giant woman approached, did not step back, did not look away. Why? Grace asked. Why would you risk coming here? The Daltons are watching every road. Because I know what it is like to be alone, to be judged, to have everyone look at you like you are something less than human. Charlotte pulled up her sleeve, revealing a scar that ran from her wrist to her elbow. Burn marks, old and healed, but still visible. My husband did this, among other things. I killed him with a fireplace poker 3 years ago. Self-defense, they called it. But the eyes of the town called me murderer. Grace stared at the scar, at the woman who bore it. You killed him. He was coming at me with a knife. It was him or me, so I made a choice. Charlotte lowered her sleeve. Just like you made a choice with Frank Dalton. And I will not condemn you for it, not when I have done the same. Something passed between the two women, a recognition, an understanding that went deeper than words. Come inside, Grace said, and please. Over coffee and hardtack, Charlotte explained why she had come. I have been organizing, she said quietly, for months now. There are women in Blackstone who have suffered at the hands of the Daltons, who have lost husbands or fathers or brothers, who have been hurt and threatened and pushed down for too long. How many, Nathan asked. 12 so far, including me. We call ourselves a sewing circle officially. We meet at my dress shop every Wednesday afternoon. But what we really do is talk, share stories, give each other strength. A resistance, Grace said softly. Of a sort. We cannot fight the Daltons with guns. We do not have the numbers or the weapons. But we can witness. We can testify. We can stand together and refuse to be silent any longer. That is dangerous, Nathan said. If the Daltons find out, they will kill us. I know. Charlotte's voice was steady. But there are worse things than dying. Living in fear is one of them. Watching good people be destroyed while you do nothing is another. She turned to Grace. I came to invite you to our circle. We meet tomorrow afternoon. It would mean going into town, being seen, but it would also mean showing people that you are not a monster, that you are a woman who deserves justice. Grace was silent for a long moment. Nathan watched her face, saw the war playing out behind her eyes. Fear versus courage. Hiding versus standing. I have not been to town in 2 years, she said finally. Not since Thomas died. I am afraid of what people will say, what they will do. I will go with you, Nathan said. Grace looked at him. Nathan, you do not have to. I will go with you, he repeated, to the edge of town. After that, you walk in alone. Show them you are not hiding anymore. Show them you are not afraid, my mom. Charlotte nodded. He is right. If they see you cowering, if they see you sneaking around, they will think the Daltons have broken you. But if they see you walking tall, looking them in the eye, they will see a woman who refuses to be broken, Grace finished. A woman who has survived everything they tried to do to her. She closed her eyes, drew a deep breath. Tomorrow, she said, I will come tomorrow. Charlotte left an hour later, promising to have everything ready for Grace's arrival. Nathan walked her to her horse, wanting to ask questions away from Grace's hearing. The traitor, he said quietly. Do you know who it is? Charlotte's face darkened. I have suspicions, but no proof, not yet. Who's him? Owen Briggs, the bartender at the Lucky Strike. He hears everything, sees everyone, and he has been too friendly with the Daltons for too long. Nathan remembered Owen, the kind-faced man who had told him about the Brennan Ranch, who had warned him about Grace, who had known exactly what questions to ask and what information to share. It makes sense, Nathan said. He was the one who told me where to find this land, almost like he wanted me to come here, or wanted the Daltons to know you were coming. Charlotte mounted her horse. Be careful, Mr. Cole. Owen is not the only one watching. There are eyes everywhere in this territory, and not all of them are friendly. That night, Nathan told Grace about his suspicions, about Owen Briggs and the possibility that they were being watched, monitored, their every move reported back to the Daltons. Grace listened in silence. When he finished, she nodded slowly. It fits, she said. Owen was always too curious, too interested in other people's business. Thomas never trusted him. Then we use that against them. How? We let Owen see what we want him to see, hear what we want him to hear. Feed them false information until they do not know what is real and what is not. Grace smiled. It was a cold smile, the smile of a woman who had learned to fight with more than just her hands. You are a dangerous man, Nathan Cole. I am a survivor, same as you. They sat together by the fire, the night pressing in around them, and planned their next move. The war with the Daltons was coming, but for the first time, Nathan felt like they might have a chance. A slim chance. A desperate chance. But a chance nonetheless. The next morning, Nathan woke to the smell of smoke. Not campfire smoke, not cooking smoke. Something sharper, more acrid. He was on his feet before his eyes were fully open, rifle in hand, heart pounding. Grace, she was already up, standing by the window, her face illuminated by orange light. The barn, she said. It is on fire. Nathan ran outside. The barn's southwest corner was engulfed in flames, fire licking up the weathered wood like hungry tongues. The dry timber caught fast, spreading even as he watched. "Water," he shouted. "We need water." They fought the fire together. Nathan hauled buckets from the well, while Grace threw them on the flames, her massive arms launching water further and more accurately than any man could have managed. The heat was intense searing, but they did not stop, did not rest. 10 minutes, 15, 20. Finally, the flames began to die. The corner of the barn was blackened and charred, but the main structure still stood. They had saved it. Nathan stood gasping for breath, sweat streaming down his face. Grace was beside him, covered in soot, her eyes red from smoke. "It was not an accident," she said. No." He walked to where the fire had started. Even in the dim pre-dawn light, the evidence was clear. A kerosene can half empty lying in the dirt, and boot prints, large boot prints. Size 13 at least. Luther, or one of his men. "They tried to burn us out," Grace said. "Wanted to destroy the barn, kill the horses, send a message." "The message is clear." Nathan's voice was hard. "They know we are here, they know we are not leaving, and they are done waiting." Grace knelt beside the kerosene can, picked it up, examined it. "There is something else," she said, "something wrong." "What?" "They knew exactly when to come, exactly when you would be asleep, exactly when I would be away from the window." She looked at him. "Someone told them, someone who knew our routines." The traitor, still feeding information to the enemy. But how they had been careful, had not left the ranch except for brief trips to check the perimeter, had not spoken to anyone except Daniel Cooper and Charlotte Webb. "Unless Charlotte's visit yesterday," Nathan said slowly, "Owen would have seen her leave town, would have known where she was going, and would have reported it to the Daltons." Grace's face was grim. "They know about the resistance, about the women's circle, about everything." The implications hit Nathan like a physical blow. If the Daltons knew about Charlotte's organizing, they would move to crush it, would target the women involved, would make an example of them. "We need to warn her," Nathan said, "before they—" A scream cut through the morning air, high and sharp and full of terror. It came from the direction of the cottonwood grove. Nathan ran. Grace followed, limping on legs that were still not fully healed. They crashed through the underbrush branches, whipping at their faces, the scream echoing in their ears. They found her in the clearing near Thomas's grave, one of Charlotte's women. Martha Swenson, an elderly woman whose husband had died in a Dalton-arranged accident 3 years ago. She was on her knees sobbing, pointing at something tied to the wooden cross that marked Thomas Brennan's resting place. A dead crow, its throat cut, a piece of paper pinned to its chest. Nathan approached slowly, read the words scrawled in dark ink. "Stop helping the freak or die like this bird." Grace read it over his shoulder. Her face went pale, then red with rage. "They desecrated his grave," she whispered. "Thomas's grave. They came here to the place where my husband rests, and they left this filth." Martha was still sobbing. "I came to pay my respects. I knew Tama. He was kind to me after my husband died. And I found... Nathan put a hand on her shoulder. "It is all right, Mrs. Swenson. You are safe now." "Safe?" The old woman laughed bitterly. "There is no safe. There never was. Not while the Daltons rule this territory." Grace knelt beside the grave, removed the dead bird with careful hands, unpinned the note, and tore it to pieces. "No more," she said. Her voice was low, dangerous. "No more hiding, no more fear, no more letting them do whatever they want without consequence." She turned to Nathan. Her eyes were blazing. "I am going to town, today, now, and I am going to show everyone in Blackstone what the Daltons really are." "Grace, no." She cut him off. "I am done being afraid. Done letting them dictate the terms. They want war, they will have it." Nathan saw something in her face that he recognized. The same thing he had felt after Elizabeth died. After he shot the traitor, the cold clarity of someone who has been pushed beyond endurance and has nothing left to lose. "All right," he said, "but we do it smart, not angry." "I can be both." "Yes, but smart keeps you alive. Angry just gets you killed faster." Grace stared at him for a long moment. Then slowly the fire in her eyes banked to something more controlled, more focused. "Smart," she agreed. "Tell me what you have in mind." They made a plan, a dangerous plan. A plan that would either turn the tide against the Daltons or get them both killed. Nathan would ride ahead to Blackstone, make himself visible, draw attention. Let the Daltons focus on him while Grace approached from a different direction. Grace would go straight to Charlotte's dress shop, would speak to the women gathered there, would tell her story to anyone who would listen. And Martha Swenson would spread the word about what the Daltons had done to Thomas Brennan's grave, would show people that the Daltons had no respect for the dead, no respect for decency, no respect for anything but their own power. It was risky. If the Daltons caught wind of what they were doing, if they decided to act before Grace could make her case, everything would collapse. But the alternative was waiting, hiding, letting the Daltons pick them off one by one. Nathan preferred to die fighting. He rode into Blackstone at midday. The sun beat down on the dusty main street, making the air shimmer and dance. People stopped what they were doing to watch him pass. He could feel their eyes on him, could sense the mixture of fear and curiosity and hostility. The Lucky Strike saloon was exactly where he had left it. Owen Briggs stood behind the bar, polishing a glass, his kind face arranged in an expression of welcome that did not reach his eyes. "Mr. Cole," Owen said, "did not expect to see you in town. Heard you had companies out at the Brennan place." Nathan sat at the bar, ordered whiskey, let Owen pour it. "News travels fast," Nathan said. "Small town, not much else to talk about." Owen set down the bottle. "People are saying you are harboring a murderer, that giant woman who killed Frank Dalton. She killed him in self-defense, after he tortured her for 37 days. That is one version of events. It is the true version." Owen shrugged. "Truth is slippery out here, Mr. Cole. Depends on who is telling it." Nathan drank his whiskey, set the glass down. "I am going to tell you something, Owen. Something I want you to pass along to whoever you report to." Owen's face flickered, just for a moment, but Nathan saw it. "I do not know what you are talking about." "Yes, you do. You are the Daltons' eyes and ears in this town. You see everything, hear everything, report everything." Owen was silent. His hand had stopped polishing the glass. "Here is what I want you to tell Henry Dalton," Nathan continued. "I am not leaving. Grace is not leaving. We are going to stay on that land until hell freezes over or one of us stops breathing. And if Henry wants a war, we are ready to give him one." "That sounds like a threat." "It is a promise." Nathan stood, dropped coins on the bar. "One more thing. Tell Henry that his secret is out. Everyone in this territory is going to know what he did to Thomas Brennan, what he did to Grace, what he has been doing to this town for years." He walked out of the saloon without looking back. But he could feel Owen's eyes on him, calculating, assessing, already composing the message he would send to his masters. Good. Let them hear. Let them know what was coming. Nathan mounted Smoke and rode to the edge of town, waited in the shadow of a water tower, watching the main street. An hour passed, then another, and then he saw her. Grace Brennan, 8 feet 6 inches of woman, walking down the main street of Blackstone in broad daylight. She did not hurry, did not hide, did not duck her head or avoid people's eyes. She walked tall, her spine straight, her shoulders back, her face calm and composed. People stopped to stare. Of course they did. How could they not? She was impossible, miraculous, terrifying, a giant walking among them like something out of a legend. But Grace did not flinch from their stares, did not react to the gasps and whispers. She just kept walking, steady and sure, towards Charlotte's dress shop at the end of the street. A child cried, frightened by her size. The mother scooped up the child and hurried away. A man spat in the dirt as she passed. Grace ignored him. Another man, braver or drunker than the rest, stepped into her path. "Freak," he said. "Murderer. You should be hanging from a rope, not walking free." Grace stopped, looked down at him. The man was maybe 5'8". His head barely reached her chest. "Move," she said, just one word. But there was something in her voice, something that made the man's face go pale. He moved. Grace continued walking, reached Charlotte's shop, opened the door and went inside. Nathan let out a breath he had not realized he was holding. Phase 1 was complete. Now came the hard part. Inside the dress shop, Charlotte had gathered 15 women, wives and widows and daughters of men the Daltons had crushed over the years. Their faces showed fierce skepticism, hope in varying degrees. Grace told her story, all of it. The traveling show, Thomas, the murder, the torture, the escape, the man who had found her in the desert and carried her to safety. She showed them her ankles still scarred from the iron bands, showed them the wounds that were healing but would never fully disappear. I am not asking you to fight for me, she said. I am asking you to fight for yourselves, for your husbands and fathers and brothers who were taken, for your daughters who deserve to grow up in a world where men like the Dalton cannot do whatever they want without consequence. One woman spoke up. What can we do? We are just women. We do not have guns or money or power. We have our voices, Grace said. We have our witness, and we have the truth. That is more than the Daltons have. The truth did not save Thomas, another woman said. The truth did not stop them from killing my husband. No. Grace's voice was heavy. It did not. But silence did not save them either. Silence just made it easier for the Daltons to keep killing. The room was quiet. The women looked at each other, weighing risks, calculating costs. Charlotte stood. I have been silent for 3 years, she said. Ever since I killed my husband to stop him from killing me. I have kept my head down, avoided trouble, tried to be invisible. And you know what it got me? Nothing. The Daltons still take what they want. People still whisper behind my back. The world goes on as if justice does not exist. She looked around the room. I am done being silent. I am done being invisible. If standing up to the Daltons means dying, at least I will die on my feet instead of on my knees. One by one, the women stood, not all of them, but most. When it was over, 12 women had pledged to speak out against the Daltons. 12 women had agreed to testify when the federal marshal arrived. 12 women had chosen courage over fear. It was not an army, but it was a start. Grace left the dress shop as the sun was setting. Charlotte walked with her to the edge of town where Nathan was waiting. That was brave, Charlotte said. What you did in there, what you said. It was necessary. Grace looked out at the desert, at the red earth and the distant mountains and the endless sky. I spent 2 years hiding. 2 years being afraid. It did not make me safe. It just made me alone. You are not alone anymore. Grace looked at Nathan. He sat on his horse rifle across his saddle face, shadowed by the brim of his hat, waiting, watching, ready. No, she said softly, I am not. They rode back to the ranch together side by side. The desert evening was cool and quiet, the only sound the steady rhythm of hoofbeats on packed earth. You did well today, Nathan said. In town, I was terrified. But you did it anyway. That is what courage is, not the absence of fear. The choice to act despite it. Grace was quiet for a moment. Then she said, Nathan, there is something I need to tell you. What? Earlier, when we were fighting the fire, when we found the dead bird on Thomas's grave, I wanted to kill them. All of them. Henry and Luther and every man who rides with them. I wanted to tear them apart with my bare hands. That is understandable. It scared me, the intensity of it, the rage. She paused. I am afraid of what I might become. Afraid that if I let the anger take over, I will be the monster they say I am. Nathan considered his words carefully. I killed a man once, he said. Not in self-defense, not in a fair fight. I rode into town and shot him in the head because I blamed him for Elizabeth's death. Grace looked at him sharply. The traitor. The one who held your debt. Yes, I thought killing him would make me feel better, would fill the hole that Elizabeth left. Nathan shook his head. It did not. All it did was add another weight to the ones I was already carrying. Do you regret it? Every day, not because he did not deserve it, because of what it cost me, what it made me become even for just a moment. Grace was silent. The difference between a monster and a person, Nathan continued, is not whether you have the capacity for violence. We all do. The difference is whether you let that violence consume you, whether you lose yourself in the darkness or find a way to carry it without being destroyed. How do you carry it? Nathan thought about the question. Thought about 2 years of wandering, of running, of trying to outpace the guilt that never left him. I am still learning, he admitted. But I think the answer has something to do with connection, with caring about something beyond your own pain, with finding people who see you not as a monster, but as a human being capable of both darkness and light. Grace reached out, took his hand. "You see me that way," she said. "Do you not? I see a woman who has survived the unsurvivable, who has endured what should have killed her, who still has the capacity for kindness and courage despite everything that has been done to her." Nathan squeezed her hand. "As I see you, Grace, all of you, and I am not afraid of what I see." They rode the rest of the way in silence, hands clasped between them, connected by something that went deeper than words. That night, something changed. They were sitting by the fire in the main room of the house, the flames casting dancing shadows on the walls. Grace's ankles were propped up, almost healed now. Nathan was cleaning his rifle, the familiar motions soothing. "Nathan," Grace said. He looked up. "I think I am falling in love with you." The words hung in the air between them. Nathan felt his heart start again, beat faster than before. "I know," he said. "I think I am falling in love with you too." "Does that scare you?" "Terrifies me. Everyone I have ever loved has died, my parents, Elizabeth. I'm afraid that loving you means losing you." "What if it does not? What if we stop being afraid of what might happen and focus on what is happening right now?" Nathan set down his rifle, stood, crossed to where Grace sat. She was so tall, even sitting her eyes were nearly level with his. He reached out, touched her face, traced the line of her jaw with his fingertips. "You are beautiful," he said. "Not despite what you are, because of it." Grace's breath caught. "No one has ever said that to me, not even Thomas." Then they were not looking closely enough. He leaned in, she leaned down. They met in the middle. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative. Two people who had both been hurt too much, moving carefully, afraid of breaking something fragile. Then it deepened, became something more, something urgent and desperate and full of need. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathing hard. "We should wait," Nathan said, "until this is over, until you are safe." "What if I do not want to wait? What if I have spent too much of my life waiting for things to be safe, to be right, to be perfect? What if I want to live now while I still can?" Nathan looked into her eyes, saw the want there, the need, the choice she was making. "Are you sure?" "I have never been more sure of anything." He kissed her again, and this time neither of them held back. The days that followed were both the happiest and the most dangerous of Nathan's life. He and Grace fell into a rhythm of work and watchfulness. During the days they fortified the ranch, built barricades, laid traps, stockpiled ammunition and supplies. At night they held each other, finding comfort and courage in their connection. Charlotte came twice more, bringing news from town. The Daltons were gathering forces. Luther had been seen riding north, recruiting hired guns from mining camps and cattle towns. Henry was meeting with lawyers, trying to find legal grounds to seize the Brennan Ranch. But there was good news too. The women's circle was growing. More women were coming forward, sharing stories, adding their voices to the chorus of accusation against the Dalton family. Word was spreading beyond Blackstone to other towns, other territories. And Daniel Cooper had received another letter from Marshall Cross. The federal lawman was on his way, would arrive in 3 weeks. 3 weeks. If they could survive 3 weeks, justice might finally come. On the 20th day, the Daltons made their move. Nathan was checking the perimeter when he heard the cattle lowing. Strange sounds, frightened sounds. He ran toward the corral and found it empty. 30 head of cattle, the last of the Brennan herd, were gone. He tracked them north, found signs of at least 6 riders driving them toward Dead Horse Canyon. He knew what this was, a trap, a lure to draw them out into the open where the Daltons would have the advantage. He rode back to tell Grace. "They want us to come after them," he said. "They have probably got men waiting to ambush us. We cannot let them take the cattle. That is our livelihood, our future. Cannot win a fight against 6 armed men either." Grace was silent for a moment, thinking. "What if we do not fight them directly?" she said. "What if we go at night? Come at them from a direction they do not expect. Take back what is ours without giving them the battle they want." Nathan considered the plan. It was risky, but all their options were risky now. "Dead Horse Canyon has one entrance," he said, "but the back wall is climbable. If we can get above them, we can drive the cattle out before they know what is happening." They left at sunset, rode through the cooling desert, navigating by stars and instinct. Nathan knew this country now, had spent weeks learning its contours and secrets. They reached the canyon rim at midnight, looked down at the scene below. 6 men, just as Nathan had expected. Henry Dalton himself was there, recognizable by his tailored clothes and the silver pistol at his hip. Luther stood beside him, pacing like a caged animal. 4 hired guns sprawled around a campfire, playing cards, rifles within easy reach. The cattle were penned at the narrow end of the canyon, nervous, restless. "They are expecting us to come through the entrance," Grace whispered. "See how they have positioned their guards." Nathan nodded. The Daltons had set a perfect trap. Anyone riding into that canyon would be caught in a crossfire, cut down before they could draw a weapon. "Can you climb down the back wall?" Grace studied the rocky face. "Yes, it is steep, but I can manage it." "Can you?" "I spent 15 years in the mountains. I can climb anything." They descended slowly, carefully, making as little noise as possible. The rock was treacherous in the darkness, but Nathan had spent a lifetime reading stone, and Grace's massive hands found holds that a smaller person would have missed. They reached the canyon floor. The cattle were 50 yards away. The Dalton camp was 100 yards beyond that. Grace began to hum, a low sound barely audible, an Irish tune Thomas had taught her. The cattle's ears pricked up. They recognized the sound, trusted it. Slowly, gently, Grace began to move them toward the canyon entrance. Nathan cut the crude ropes that formed their pen, clearing the way. They were almost out when one of the guards stood up, stretched, started walking toward the cattle, and saw Nathan in the moonlight. "They are here," the guard shouted. "The canyon. They came from the canyon." The camp erupted into chaos. Men scrambling for weapons, shouting orders, trying to see in the darkness. "Run!" Nathan yelled. "Drive them out!" Grace abandoned subtlety. She roared a sound that seemed to shake the very walls of the canyon, and the cattle bolted. 30 head of beef cattle stampeding toward the canyon mouth, driven by pure animal terror. Nathan fired his rifle, not aiming to kill, just creating chaos, buying time. Luther Dalton appeared in front of him, pistol drawn. Nathan dove to the side as the shot rang out, felt the bullet tug at his sleeve. He came up firing. Luther staggered, clutched his shoulder. Went down, more shots, more chaos. Grace was at the canyon entrance now, the cattle streaming past her into the open desert. Nathan ran toward her, almost made it. Then Henry Dalton stepped out of the shadows, rifle aimed. Not at Nathan, at Grace. "Stop," Henry said. His voice was calm, cold. "Or I kill her." Nathan froze. Grace stood in the moonlight, her face pale, her eyes fixed on the rifle pointed at her heart. "Henry," she said, "this does not have to end in blood. It ended in blood 2 years ago, when you chose Thomas over me, when you humiliated me in front of everyone." Henry's face twisted with old rage. "I loved you, Grace. I would have given you everything, and you threw it back in my face. What you felt was not love. Love does not chain people up. Love does not torture them. You do not know what love is." Henry's finger tightened on the trigger. "You never did." Nathan saw his chance. Henry was focused on Grace, consumed by his obsession. Not watching his flanks, Nathan drew his Bowie knife. Threw it. The blade caught Henry into the shoulder, spinning him around. His rifle discharged harmlessly into the air. Grace moved, faster than seemed possible for someone her size. She crossed the distance between them in 2 strides, grabbed Henry by the throat, lifted him off his feet. "I should kill you," she said. Her voice was barely human. "I should crush your throat the way I crushed your brother's." Henry dangled in her grip, face purpling, feet kicking uselessly. "Grace," Nathan's voice was steady. "Grace, look at me." She turned her head. Her eyes were wild, lost in rage and pain, and the memory of everything the Daltons had taken from her. "If you kill him, you become what they say you are. A monster. A murderer. Is that what you want? Is that who you want to be?" Grace stared at him. The rage slowly drained from her face, replaced by something else. Something that looked like grief. "He killed Thomas," she whispered. "He destroyed my life." "I know, but Thomas would not want you to destroy yourself for revenge. He would want you to live, to build something new, to honor his memory by being more than the violence that took him." Slowly, Grace's grip loosened. Henry dropped to the ground, gasping, clutching his throat. She stepped back, looked down at the man who had caused so much suffering. I am not going to kill you, she said, not because you deserve mercy, because I deserve to be free of you, free of the hate and the fear and the rage that you put in me. She turned to Nathan, reached out her hand. Let us go home. They drove the cattle through the night. Behind them, the sounds of the Dalton camp faded into silence. Henry's men were scattered leaderless. Luther was wounded. Henry himself was broken, defeated not by violence, but by something he did not understand. Mercy, grace, the refusal to become the monster they wanted her to be. When they reached the ranch at dawn, Grace was exhausted. Her ankles were bleeding again, reopened by the climb and the run. But she was smiling. We did it, she said. We got them back. Nathan helped her down from her horse, held her close. Does it get easier, she asked, choosing mercy over revenge? No, Nathan said honestly, but it gets clearer. You learn who you want to be, and you learn who you refuse to become. Grace leaned into him, let him support her weight. We did it, she said, together. Together, he agreed. That is how it will always be. What happens now? Nathan looked out at the desert, at the rising sun, painting the land in shades of gold and red. Now we wait. For the marshal, for justice, for whatever comes next. And if the Daltons come back, if they bring more men, then we fight again. Together. Grace smiled. Together. I like the sound of that. They walked into the house, arms around each other, ready to face whatever the future would bring. 2 weeks until Marshal Cross arrived. 2 weeks until everything changed. 2 weeks to survive. But for the first time since this all began, Nathan believed they could do it. 3 weeks had passed since the cattle raid. 3 weeks of waiting, of watching, of wondering if help would ever come. And then Daniel Cooper rode out to the ranch with news that changed everything. Nathan saw him coming from the watchtower he had built on the barn roof. A single rider moving fast, dust rising behind him like a warning flag. He climbed down and met Cooper at the gate, rifle ready but not raised. Marshal Cross, Cooper said before he had even dismounted. His face was flushed with excitement and fear. He is here. Arrived in Santa Fe yesterday. He is coming to Blackstone tomorrow. Nathan felt something loosen in his chest. Hope, maybe. Or the beginning of something that felt almost like relief. How do you know? I have a contact in Santa Fe, a telegraph operator who owes me a favor. Cooper swung down from his horse, his breath coming fast. But that is not all. Cross brought federal warrants for Henry Dalton, for Luther, for Sheriff Mitchell, for Judge Harland in Santa Fe. Warrants for what? Murder, land fraud, bribery, corruption of justice. Cooper's eyes were bright. Everything we documented, everything we sent him. He believed us, Nathan. He believed us, and he is coming to make it right. Nathan turned toward the house where Grace was watching from the window. She had heard. He could see it in her face, the way her expression shifted from wary to hopeful to something that looked almost like disbelief. 2 years of hiding, 2 years of fear, and now finally the possibility of justice. There is more, Cooper said, his voice dropping. The Daltons know. Somehow they found out Cross is coming. Henry has been calling in every favor, every hired gun, every corrupt official he can reach. He is planning something, and what, I do not know, but whatever it is, he is planning to do it before Cross arrives, before the law can touch him. Nathan absorbed this information, calculated the risks. How long do we have? Cross will be in Blackstone by tomorrow afternoon, which means Henry has to move tonight, or early tomorrow morning. Less than 24 hours, less than a day to survive before everything changed. Thank you, Daniel, Nathan said, for everything you have done, for the risks you have taken. Do not thank me yet. Cooper mounted his horse again. Thank me when this is over, when we are all still alive. He rode away and Nathan walked back to the house where Grace was waiting. She met him at the door, her face a mixture of hope and fear. Is it true, she asked. Is the marshal really coming? Tomorrow afternoon, if we can survive until then. Grace closed her eyes, drew a deep breath. When she opened them again, there was steel in her gaze. Then we survive. Whatever it takes. They spent the rest of the day preparing, barricading windows, stockpiling ammunition, setting traps along every approach to the ranch. Nathan showed Grace how to use the rifle, how to aim, how to lead a moving target. She learned quickly, her massive hands steady on the weapon, her eyes sharp. Charlotte arrived at sunset with news of her own. The women's circle had voted. All 12 of them would come to the ranch, would stand with Grace and Nathan against whatever the Daltons brought. You cannot ask them to do that, Grace said. This is not their fight. They are not asking permission. Charlotte's voice was firm. They decided, together, that this ends now one way or another. If the Daltons come in force, people will die. People have been dying for years, my husband, your husband, a dozen others who got in the Daltons' way. Charlotte's jaw tightened. The only difference is this time we will be fighting back. The women arrived throughout the evening. Martha Swenson, whose husband had been killed in a Dalton-arranged accident. Rebecca Foster, whose brother had disappeared after speaking out against Henry. Sarah Chen, whose family had been driven off their land. And 9 others, each with their own story of loss and rage and the desperate need for justice. They were not soldiers. Most of them had never fired a gun. But they came anyway because standing together was better than dying alone. Nathan watched them gather in the main room of the house, watched Grace move among them, speaking quietly, offering comfort and strength. She was different with them than she was with him. Gentler, more maternal, as if being surrounded by other women who had suffered reminded her of something she had almost forgotten. That she was not alone, that she had never been alone, not really, that there were others who understood. They look up to you, Nathan said, when Grace finally came to stand beside him. These women, they see you as a leader. I do not know how to be a leader. I spent my life being stared at, being judged. I do not know how to inspire people. You already have, just by surviving, just by refusing to break. Grace looked at him. In the lamplight, her face was soft, almost vulnerable. What if I am not strong enough? What if they come and I freeze? What if I let everyone down? Nathan took her hand, her massive fingers curled around his gentle, despite their strength. You will not freeze. You will not let anyone down. And even if you did, even if everything went wrong, these women would still be glad they came. Because standing up matters, Grace. Win or lose, fighting back matters. She squeezed his hand, nodded slowly. Thank you, she said, for believing in me, for seeing me when no one else did. I will always see you, no matter what happens. The night passed slowly. Nathan organized watches rotating sentries every 2 hours. The women who could shoot took positions at windows. The others prepared bandages, loaded ammunition, did whatever they could to help. Grace stayed close to Nathan, moving through the house like a ghost, checking positions, offering encouragement. She did not sleep. Neither did he. And now, my friend, I want to ask you something. If you were Nathan Cole standing in that house with 20 armed men coming for you, what would you do? Would you run? Would you fight? Would you pray for a miracle that might never come? Take a sip of your coffee, or maybe that evening tea. Tell me where you are watching from and what time it is where you are. And if you want to know how this story ends, stay with me, because we are about to find out together. At midnight, Charlotte brought coffee and news. Owen Briggs has disappeared, she said. No one has seen him since yesterday. Some people are saying he rode out to meet Henry Dalton. The traitor going to join his masters, Nathan said. Good. One less pair of eyes watching us. Or one more gun pointed at us tomorrow. They drank their coffee in silence. Outside, the desert night was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that comes before a storm. At 3 a.m, the quiet broke. Nathan heard them first. Hoofbeats distant but growing closer. Many horses, coming from the north. He climbed to the watchtower, peered through the darkness, counted torches moving along the canyon road. 20, maybe more. An army. The Daltons were coming in force. Nathan climbed down, found Grace waiting for him, her face pale in the starlight. How many, she asked. At least 20, maybe 25. Against 14 women and 1 man. Against 15 people who refused to surrender. Grace almost smiled. You count me as one person, I am worth at least 3. Then we have 17. Almost even odds. They woke the others, distributed weapons, took positions. Nathan moved through the house, checking each window, each barricade, each line of fire. The women were afraid. He could see it in their eyes, hear it in their breathing. But they did not run, did not hide. They stood at their posts and waited for what was coming. Grace positioned herself at the main door, the largest target in the house, but also the strongest defender. Anyone who wanted to enter would have to go through her. Nathan took the window beside her, close enough to cover her, close enough to die together if it came to that. Whatever happens, he said quietly, I want you to know something. What? I love you, not despite what you are, because of it. Because you are the strongest, bravest, most extraordinary person I have ever known. Grace turned to look at him. Her eyes were wet. I love you too, more than I thought I could love anyone again. Then let us survive this, together, together. The torches grew closer. The sound of hoof beats became thunder. And then out of the darkness they appeared. Henry Dalton rode at the head of the column. His face was pale, his eyes wild. Behind him came Luther, arms still bandaged from Nathan's bullet. And behind them, a small army of hired guns, outlaws, desperate men who would kill for money. They stopped 50 yards from the house. Henry raised his hand and the column halted. Nathan Cole, Henry's voice carried across the distance. Send out the freak. Send her out and the rest of you can live. Nathan stepped onto the porch, rifle ready. She is not going anywhere, Henry. And neither are you. Federal Marshal is coming tomorrow. Your time is over. Cross, Henry laughed. It was not a sane sound. Cross will arrive to find ashes. He will arrive to find everyone in that house dead, including the giant bitch who killed my brother. Your brother got what he deserved, same as you will. Henry's face twisted with rage. Kill them. Kill them all. The hired guns charged, guns blazing, torches flying. Nathan fired, hit the lead rider, saw him fall. Beside him, Grace opened fire. Her aim was not as good as his, but at this range it did not matter. Another rider went down. Another. Inside the house, the women fired from windows. Not accurately, but enough. Enough to create chaos. Enough to break the charge. The outlaws scattered, seeking cover behind rocks and outbuildings. Bullets cracked against the adobe walls. Glass shattered. Someone screamed inside the house. Martha is hit, Charlotte's voice. Not bad, but she is bleeding. Keep firing, Nathan shouted. Do not let them regroup. The battle became chaos, smoke and noise and the copper smell of blood. Nathan fired until his rifle was empty, switched to his pistol, fired again. Grace stood beside him, reloading with hands that did not shake, firing, with eyes that held no fear. They killed 6 men in the first 5 minutes. Wounded more, but there were too many. Too many guns, too many bullets, too many men who did not care if they lived or died as long as they got paid. The attackers reached the walls, started trying to break through barricades. Nathan heard axes hitting wood, heard shouts and curses as the women inside fought back. Then the fire started. A torch landed on the roof, then another. The dry wood caught instantly, flames spreading faster than thought. The house is burning, someone screamed. We have to get out. No, Grace's voice was thunder. We stand, we fight. But the fire was spreading too fast. Smoke filled the air, choking, blinding. The women were coughing, crying, trying to see through the haze. Nathan made a decision. Everyone out, he shouted. Out the back, head for the cottonwood grove. They ran, pouring out of the burning house into the darkness. Nathan and Grace brought up the rear, firing at anyone who tried to follow. The outlaws gave chase. But the night was dark and the terrain was rough, and the women knew this land better than any hired gun. They reached the cottonwood grove, Thomas's grave, the place where Grace had spent 2 years hiding. The fire lit the sky behind them. The Brennan Ranch. Everything Grace had built with her husband, everything they had fought to protect, was burning. Grace stood at the edge of the grove watching the flames. It is gone, she whispered. Everything. Not everything. Nathan put his arm around her. You are still here. We are still here. That is what matters. Gunshots in the darkness. The outlaws were searching for them, spreading through the desert. We cannot stay here, Charlotte said. They will find us. Where can we go? Rebecca's voice was near panic. There is nowhere safe. Nathan thought fast. The town, Blackstone. If they could reach it before dawn, if they could find shelter among the people, the Daltons might not risk attacking openly. The town, he said. We run for Blackstone, find shelter, wait for the marshal. That is 5 miles, Martha said. She was leaning on Charlotte, blood soaking through the bandage on her arm. Some of us cannot run that far. Then we walk. We crawl if we have to, but we keep moving. They moved through the darkness like ghosts. 14 women, some injured, all exhausted. Nathan and Grace flanked them, watching for pursuit, ready to fight if necessary. The outlaws searched the ranch, searched the cottonwood grove. But by the time they realized their prey had escaped, the women were a mile away and moving fast. Dawn found them on the outskirts of Blackstone. The town was just waking up, smoke rising from chimneys, people beginning their daily routines. Ordinary life continuing while everything had changed. Charlotte led them to her dress shop. The back room was cramped but hidden. They crowded inside the injured, lying on bolts of fabric, the others standing guard. Nathan stood at the window watching the street. "They will come here," he said. "Henry will not stop until he finds us." "Let him come." Grace's voice was hard. "Let him come and face us in the light in front of everyone. Let the whole town see what he really is. They already know what he is. They have known for years. Then let them see us refusing to break. Let them see that it is possible to stand up to monsters." Nathan looked at her, at this impossible woman who had lost everything and still refused to surrender. "Whatever happens today," he said, "I am glad I found you." "You did not find me." She almost smiled. "You saved me. Now let us survive long enough to build something worth saving." The morning passed slowly. Charlotte brought food and water. Daniel Cooper came with news. The fire had destroyed the Brennan Ranch completely. Nothing left but ashes and charred timbers. Henry Dalton was in town openly searching for them. Sheriff Mitchell was helping him, going door to door, demanding to know where the giant woman was hiding. "But people are not cooperating," Daniel said, a note of wonder in his voice. "Not the way they usually do. When Mitchell asks questions, they say they do not know. When Dalton's men threaten them, they stand their ground." "Why?" Grace asked. "Because of you. Because of what you did. You stood up to them. You fought back. You showed them it was possible." "We lost. Our home is gone. You survived. That is not losing. That is winning." At noon, the situation changed. A commotion in the street. Shouting. The sound of horses. Nathan looked out the window and felt his heart leap. A column of riders was entering Blackstone from the south. At their head rode a tall man in a dark coat, a star pinned to his chest that caught the sunlight. Federal Marshal William Cross had arrived. Cross rode into the center of town and dismounted. He was not young, maybe 50, with a weathered face and eyes that had seen too much. Behind him came a dozen deputies, hard-faced men with rifles. "I am looking for Henry Dalton," Cross's voice carried across the square. "I have a warrant for his arrest. Murder, land fraud, corruption of federal officials. He can surrender peacefully or he can resist. Either way, he is coming with me." Silence. The townspeople watched, hardly daring to breathe. Then Henry Dalton emerged from the Lucky Strike saloon. He was flanked by Luther and 6 hired guns. His face was calm, almost amused. "Marshal Cross," he said, "I have heard about you, the incorruptible lawman from Denver, the man who cannot be bought." "That is right, I cannot." "Then we have a problem, because I do not recognize your authority. This is my town, my territory, and I will not be taken by any federal dog who thinks a piece of paper makes him powerful." Cross did not flinch. "You have 2 choices, Dalton. Come peacefully or come in chains. Either way, you are coming." For a long moment, nobody moved. The tension was thick enough to cut. Then Grace stepped out of Charlotte's shop. Every eye turned to her. 8 feet, 6 inches of woman walking into the street, walking toward the standoff, walking with her head high and her shoulders back. "He killed my husband," she said. Her voice carried across the silent square. "Thomas Brennan shot him 6 times and left him to bleed out in a ditch because he would not sell our land." She took another step forward. "He locked me in chains, 40 pounds of iron on my ankles for 37 days, watched me suffer, told me how Thomas begged before he died." Another step. "He sent his men to burn my home, to kill the women who dared to support me, to destroy everything I had left." She stopped 10 feet from Henry Dalton. He had to look up to meet her eyes. "I should kill you," she said. "I could kill you right now with my bare hands the way I killed your brother Frank." Henry's face was white. His hand moved toward his gun. "But I will not," Grace continued, "because I am not like you, because justice is not the same as revenge, because Thomas would have wanted me to be better than the men who murdered him. She turned to face the crowd, the townspeople who had watched the Daltons rule for years, who had been too afraid to speak, too afraid to act. "This is over," she said. "Today, right now. If you have suffered at the hands of this family, if you have lost someone to their cruelty, if you have a story to tell, tell it. Tell it to the marshal. Tell it to each other. Tell it so loud that the whole territory hears." Silence. Then slowly people began to step forward. Martha Swenson, Rebecca Foster, Sarah Chen, Charlotte Webb. One by one, the women of the circle emerged from doorways and alleys, walking toward the square. And then others, men who had lost brothers, sons' fathers, women who had been threatened into silence, children who had grown up afraid. Dozens of them, scores. More people than Nathan could count, all converging on the square, and all looking at Henry Dalton with eyes that no longer held fear. Henry's face went from white to red. His hand closed on his gun. "You think this changes anything?" he snarled. "You think I care what these peasants say?" "I think you should care what I say we see," Marshal Cross replied calmly. "You are under arrest, Dalton. Put down your weapon." For one terrible moment, Nathan thought Henry would draw, would start shooting, would turn this moment of triumph into a bloodbath. Then Luther stepped forward. His face was gray, his eyes hollow. "It is over, Henry," he said quietly. "It has been over for a long time. We just did not want to see it." "Shut up." "No," Luther's voice cracked. "I am tired. Tired of the killing. Tired of the fear. Tired of seeing the hate in people's eyes and knowing we put it there." He turned across, held out his hands. "I will go peacefully. I will testify to everything, the murders, the fraud, all of it." "Luther," Henry's voice was a scream. "What are you doing?" "What I should have done years ago. What I should have done when you told us to kill Thomas Brennan." Luther looked at Grace. "I am sorry. It will never be enough, but I am sorry." Henry drew his gun. 3 shots rang out. Nathan's, Cross's, one of the deputies. Henry Dalton fell. The gun slipped from his fingers. Blood spread across the dusty street. He looked up at Grace standing over him, blocking out the sun. "You," he whispered. "You ruined everything." "No," Grace said. "You did that yourself a long time ago." Henry Dalton died in the streets surrounded by the people he had terrorized for years. No one mourned him. No one cried. They just watched as the light faded from his eyes and his body went still. The trial took 3 days. Marshal Cross set up court in the town hall. One by one, the witnesses came forward, told their stories, named names, provided evidence. Luther testified against his brother's memory, against Sheriff Mitchell, against Judge Harlan, against every corrupt official and hired gun who had helped the Daltons maintain their grip on the territory. Grace testified too, told the whole story from the beginning, the traveling show, Thomas, the murder, the torture, the escape, the man who had found her in the desert and saved her life. When she was done, there was not a dry eye in the courtroom. Nathan testified last, about Colorado, about Elizabeth, about the 4 men he had killed. He held nothing back, laid his sins bare before the court. "You have killed," Cross said when he was done. "Does that trouble you, Bam, every day? But I would do it again if it meant protecting the people I love." Cross nodded slowly. "That is the answer of an honest man. You are free to go, Mr. Cole. Thank you for your testimony." When it was over, when the verdicts were read and the sentences pronounced, Grace and Nathan walked out of the courtroom together. The townspeople lined the street, not staring this time, applauding, cheering, reaching out to touch Grace's hands to thank her, to offer support. She was crying. Nathan had never seen her cry from joy before. "They see me," she whispered. "They finally see me." They always should have. It just took them a while to find their courage. They walked through the cheering crowd toward the edge of town, toward whatever future waited for them. The Brennan Ranch was gone, burned to ashes, but as they stood looking at the charred remains, Nathan felt something unexpected. Hope. "We can rebuild," he said, "together." Grace looked at him, at this man who had come out of the desert and changed her life. "Together," she agreed. "I like the sound of that." 3 months later in the spring, they stood under the cottonwood trees where Thomas was buried. Charlotte Webb officiated, having gotten herself ordained for the occasion. Daniel Cooper stood as witness, and around them a crowd of nearly 60 people watched as Nathan Cole and Grace Brennan became husband and wife. "Do you take this woman," Charlotte asked, "to love and protect in sickness and health for as long as you both shall live?" "I do." "Do you take this man to love and support in sickness and health for as long as you both shall live?" "I do." "Then by the power vested in me, I pronounce you married." They kissed, Nathan on his toes, Grace bending down. They met in the middle the way they always did. The crowd cheered, the spring sun shone down on them. And somewhere in the distance, Nathan thought he heard Elizabeth's voice telling him it was okay, that he was allowed to be happy, that love once lost could be found again. That evening after the celebration, after the food and the dancing and the well wishes, Grace took Nathan to Thomas's grave. "I want you to know him," she said, "the way I knew him." She knelt beside the wooden cross. Nathan knelt beside her. "Thomas," she said, "this is Nathan. He is my husband now. He saved my life when I thought there was nothing left to save. He saw me when everyone else saw a monster." She paused, took Nathan's hand. "I will never stop loving you. You gave me 8 years of happiness when I thought I would never have any. But I need to live now. I need to move forward. And I think you would understand." The wind rustled through the cottonwood leaves. It almost sounded like a blessing. They built a new house where the old one had stood. Bigger, stronger, with doorways tall enough for Grace and rooms designed for the family they hoped to have. People came to help. Charlotte and Daniel, who had married quietly 2 weeks after the trial. The women of the circle who had become like sisters. Families from across the territory who had heard about the giant woman and the mountain man who had stood against the Daltons and won. They came bringing lumber and nails and food and tools. They came bringing hope and gratitude and the promise of a community built on something other than fear. By summer, the house was finished. By fall, the ranch was thriving. And by winter, Grace told Nathan the news he had been hoping to hear. "I am pregnant," she said. "The doctor confirmed it today." Nathan felt his heart expand until he thought it might burst. "Are you happy?" Grace asked, suddenly uncertain. "I know we talked about it, but if you are not ready—" He silenced her with a kiss. "I am terrified," he admitted when they parted. "Terrified and overjoyed and grateful and about 100 other things I do not have words for." "So am I," she smiled. "We can be terrified together." The baby came in the spring. Thomas's child, the one Grace had carried through torture and escape and war. A boy, small by Grace's standards but perfect in every way. They named him Thomas after his father, the man who had loved Grace first. Nathan held the child as if he were his own, because in every way that mattered, he was. 2 years later, another child, Jacob, then Samuel, then Hannah. The ranch grew. The community grew. People came from across the territory drawn by stories of the giant woman and her husband, drawn by the promise of a place where outcasts could be family. They called it Stone Sanctuary, a name that meant nothing and everything. A place where people who had been broken could find healing, where people who had been alone could find connection, where the impossible could become ordinary. Nathan Cole was 70 years old when he first told the story. He sat in a chair he had built 43 years earlier in a house filled with the sounds of grandchildren playing. His beard was white now, his hands gnarled with age, his body marked by a lifetime of scars. But his eyes were still clear, still sharp, still the eyes of a mountain man who had seen everything and survived it all. Across from him sat Benjamin, his grandson. 17 years old, tall, like his grandmother, serious, like his grandfather. The boy had come with questions, hard questions. "They are saying in town that you killed men," Benjamin said. "Mr. Mitchell's son. He said you were a murderer." Nathan nodded slowly. 4 men, not 3. 4. Benjamin's eyes went wide. Nathan had expected that. "Do you want to hear about death?" he asked. "Or do you want to hear about living?" "I want to hear the truth." "Then you will have it, all of it." And Nathan began to tell the story about Colorado, about Elizabeth, about the desert and the giant woman crawling through it, about love and loss and the choices that define us. He told it all, holding nothing back. When he was done, the fire had burned down to embers. Benjamin sat in silence, absorbing everything he had heard. The Daltons, the boy finally said. Their family that's still here, still trying to buy our land. They offered $12,000 last week. What did you tell them? I said no, said this land was not for sale. Why? Benjamin looked at his grandfather. At this old man who had once been a mountain mom, a killer, a savior, a lover, a father, a builder of sanctuary. Because you taught me something. Strength is not size or muscles or even courage. Strength is choosing every day, choosing your values over your fears. I choose to keep this land, not because it is valuable, because it means something. Nathan felt his eyes sting, felt something loosen in his chest that had been tight for decades. That is the right answer, he said. That is exactly the right answer. Grace appeared in the doorway. 70 years old, gray-haired, still 8 feet 6 inches tall. Still the most beautiful woman Nathan had ever seen. Telling stories again, she asked, settling into her chair. The chair Nathan had built before they were married, before the fire, before everything. The important one, he said, the one that matters. She smiled, reached out and took his hand. Did you tell him the part where I proposed? I did. Good. Do not want him thinking men always have to do the asking. That evening, the whole community gathered. 200 people now, Chinese and black and white and native and Mexican, farmers and craftsmen and teachers and doctors, all living together, working together, building something that would last long after Nathan and Grace were gone. Nathan stood to speak. His voice was not as strong as it once was, but it carried. This land, he said, was bought by a broken man and inherited by a hidden woman. We did not build it alone. Every person here built it. He looked around at faces he had known for decades, faces of people who had come with nothing and found everything. That is not just a ranch. It is not just a community. It is proof that broken things can be healed, that lost people can be found, that even in the darkest times there is always the possibility of light. He looked at Benjamin. That choice, boy, is your inheritance. Not land, choice. The choice to see people really see them when the world tells you to look away. The choice to stand up when it would be easier to kneel. The choice to love when fear would be simpler. That is sanctuary. That is legacy. That is what we built together. Later, after the celebration, after the grandchildren had been put to bed and the guests had gone home, Nathan and Grace sat on their porch, holding hands, watching the stars. We did good, Grace said. We did. Think it will last after we are gone? Nathan considered the question, thought about all the years behind them, all the struggles, all the triumphs, all the people they had helped and been helped by. It will last, he said finally, because we taught them how. Sanctuary is not walls or fences. It is opening doors, seeing people, choosing connection over fear. Grace leaned her head on his shoulder. Even after all these years, even with the aches and pains of age, she fit against him perfectly. I love you, she said. Have I told you that lately? Every day. And I love you more than I knew I could love anyone. The sun began to rise, golden light spreading across the desert, painting everything in shades of hope. Nathan Cole, 70 years old, former mountain man, husband, father, grandfather, builder of sanctuary, watched the dawn and understood something he had been learning his whole life. Home is not a place you find. It is a choice you make every morning, every day, every moment. You choose connection over isolation, love over fear, seeing over judging. That is sanctuary. That is legacy. That is what they built together. And it would last, long after they were gone, long after their names were forgotten. The sanctuary would remain, because some things once built with love cannot be destroyed. Some things are meant to last forever. So if you have ever carried a guilt too heavy to name, if you have ever felt broken beyond repair, if you have ever wondered whether you deserve a second chance at happiness, remember this story. Remember Nathan and Grace. Remember what they built from the ashes of their pain. And remember that it is never too late. Not too late to heal. Not too late to love. Not too late to find your way home. Take a deep breath. Pour yourself a cup of tea. And think about that. Because sometimes even in the wildest places, people still find their way home. And maybe, just maybe, so can you. If this story touched something in you, tap the like button. Leave a comment telling me where you are watching from. Subscribe so you do not miss what comes next, because there are more stories to tell, more journeys to take, more people who found their way home against all odds. Until next time, take care of yourself. And remember, it is never too late to start again.